There was a time when faith was given. Uh, it's expected, you know. And people who don't have faith, people who don't believe in God, are more exceptions than the norm. But if we will talk to the people around us, if we will watch social media, we will talk to a lot of people, that is slowly changing. Uh, More and more people are not caring that God exists. But a lot of them will recognize that God exists, but a lot of them don't see the importance of that reality. And before, when atheism was almost unheard of, when very, very few people were atheists, now we see a lot of people who don't believe in God. You know, God is just a social construct, an imagination of people. In other words, the world has started to lose its faith. But when we look at the first reading, which I just fall in love with, it says, by faith we understand that the universe was ordered by the word of God. In other words, without faith, the world doesn't make sense. And we see that, you know. It's not a coincidence that as atheism grows, as more and more people stop caring about God, the statistics for people who are depressed, who can't find meaning in the world, also increases. By faith, Abel offered to God a sacrifice greater than Cain's. You know, Cain's sacrifice meant nothing because he was not focused on God. And God doesn't need Cain's offering. God doesn't need Cain's sacrifice. He doesn't need anything. But he knew that because life and joy comes from him, mankind has to be one with him. And so he asks us to sacrifice, not for his gain, but for our gain. But when we lose faith, our sacrifices start losing its meaning. If we even sacrifice at all, if we even give our lives to God at all. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death. And he was found no more because God had taken him. Without faith, we cannot reach God. Without faith, we cannot find life. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. And by faith, Noah warned about what was not yet seen. But people didn't care. Just as it is impossible to please him, it is impossible to see him as well. What are the things in our lives that make us blind or make us lose our faith in God? Definitely, it's not suffering, because Noah suffered as well. Suffered from ridicule, suffered from his time in the ark. But his faith kept stable. We lose our faith when we look in ourselves as well. Remember the Tower of Babel yesterday? When people start to distrust God and rather focus on themselves, they lose faith, they lose God, they lose everything. But just as Paul, or the author of Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, remind us, it is faith, it is God that gives meaning to the world. It is faith that connects us to God, the source of life, our source of joy. And it is faith that brings us to Him, to where we are meant to be in heaven. Give your life to God. Keep your faith. The world will tell you, just as it told the people in the Tower of Babel, to let go of God, but be reminded that faith is where we find meaning, where we find life, where we find joy.